If you need a win in fantasy, this is the exact video you need. I'll be going over all my top starts and sits of the week and pretty much every single matchup as well. So make sure to stick around to the end of the video because I'll be giving you guys a list of defenses you can pick up off the waivers if you do still stream. So let's go ahead and get right into it. If you aren't subscribed, go ahead and do that. It is not too late. But the first start of the week is Nico Collins. And I can already hear everybody commenting and spamming at me.
Hey, the Jets are super good. You can't pass on them. They don't allow many points.
I know. It's a tough matchup. Actually, the toughest matchup of the week. The Jets allow the #1 least points to opposing wide receivers this year. But I don't want you guys to go through and sit a guy like Nico Collins just because the matchup is bad. Because matchups aren't everything. Last week, Nico Collins came off a really good game against another tough defense in the Broncos. The Broncos at that time were allowing the 5th least points to opposing wide receivers. After the massive class he put on, they've now moved back to 7th, and he had 9 receptions for just shy of 200 yards. The matchups aren't everything. And I get it. The #5 defense is a bit different than the #1 defense, but still, Tank Dell is out for this week, and that is making him such a safer play. He's been placed on IR. He probably won't come back for the rest of the fantasy season, but this is making Nico Collins a locked and loaded safe play. It's hiring his floor for the week. Him being out opens up about 10 targets a game that are completely unclaimed. This team is #1 in passing yards, 8th in passing touchdowns. It's a super efficient passing offense, and that high volume and ability to move the ball down the field is good because if you're on the field more, you're passing more, you're getting more opportunities, more targets, more fantasy points. And the way we should take this matchup is just by floor and ceiling evaluations. By being the #1 defense, it is a tough matchup. His ceiling is going to be lowered. Let's say there's a 20% chance of him scoring over 30 points anyways. Now with the bad matchup, that's probably going down to 10, maybe even 5. But his floor is still going to be the same. They're still going to pass the same amount. He's probably going to get about the same amount of targets. Will they be as wide open, which could lead to breakaway touchdowns? No, but he's still going to get his volume. He's still going to get his targets. And Stroud is still projected by all the sports lines to have about the same amount of completions as he usually does. Nico Collins is projected for about 6 catches. Nothing is really too different except the receptions and yards after the catch will probably be a bit lower. Again, he's a safe play. If Dalton Schultz does end up playing, I would start him as well. The Jets are actually really favorable against tight ends. They put a lot of emphasis on the wide receivers, but kind of let them roam free. So he is a decent start if you do need him. And obviously, you're going to be starting CJ Stroud still, even if he's not like a top 3 quarterback like he usually is. And as for the Jets, we're really only starting Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. Everybody else in this offense I don't want to touch. Even them are a little bit risky. But if you have any specific questions about the start sits or really anything, make sure to comment it in this video while you're watching. I go and answer 100% of them before Sunday's tip-off. But a must-sit by all means is Jordan Addison, and this one is tough. With Kirk Cousins, he was a really good wide receiver too. Kirk Cousins got injured. Now we got Josh Dobbs. Now he's kind of a flex guy from what we've seen so far. But now we have Justin Jefferson coming back, which puts him at a bench spot. The reason we love Jordan Addison and pretty much all of these wide receiver options when Kirk Cousins was healthy is because he consistently led this team to a top passing offense every year. And when you have that level of passing year in and year out consistently, you really don't have to be worried about the floor and the ceiling because they're going to get points. But now we have Josh Dobbs at quarterback. Now, is he absolutely terrible, one of the worst in the NFL? No, he's had a pretty good stretch so far, but he's still only projected for just over 200 yards. Nothing like what we expected for Kirk Cousins, but obviously this offense is not led by Kirk Cousins anymore. But the thing is, Josh Dobbs is only projected for just over 200 yards. Justin Jefferson is going to be coming back this week. He's already going to garner at least 10 targets. That's already locked and loaded by the line makers. He's projected for 7 receptions for 80 yards. That takes a lot of wind and upside out of the wings of Jordan Addison because we still have TJ Hawkinson in this offense that's going to require a target share as well. So he's probably going to end up falling as the 3rd or 4th option on this offense. Dobbs reporting 3 viable receiving options in general is a far-fetched statement, and one of the things where the odds probably aren't too high on that, I'm going to be sitting Jordan Addison this week because this is where we need to be playing it safe and make sure we make it into the playoffs. We need to balance out that safety with a little bit of high upside risk. I don't think the risk that Jordan Addison has by playing him is high upside. We're obviously starting Justin Jefferson. He's a top 10 receiver this year despite coming back from injury in a worse offense. TJ Hawkinson's also being started. Josh Dobbs, you can start if you need it. I know the quarterback pool is really dry this week, and we should be going through and starting Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams and maybe Jacoby Myers depending on your league size, but he's a little bit more of a risky play for me. I'm not exactly trusting. But a guy that we just have no choice but to start is Rashee Rice, and I love this one. It looks like he's finally blossoming into his true breakout, the thing we've been searching for in this Chiefs offense for the longest time. He's had 19 targets in the past 2 weeks in an offense that's still pretty solid despite what you might think from seeing Patrick Mahomes outside the top 5 fantasy quarterbacks, but they're still 2nd in pass attempts and 9th in passing yards despite really not having that juice at wide receiver. They're also one of the most efficient red zone offenses in the NFL, and that really bodes well for a wide receiver in Rashee Rice that's turning into the #1 option outside of Travis Kelce. He's been increasing his snaps by the week. He topped his season high at 70 last week. All of the signs are turning to green right now. Mahomes still leads the NFL in passing yards after the catch, which means he puts his wide receivers in good spots to get more yardage, which means more fantasy points, which is pretty surprising because if you look at their wide receiver pool, it's nothing but mid with Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, McCole Hardman, nobody that's really a difference maker. But they come into this matchup against the Bills, which is a more negative one. Their defense has actually been stepping up as of late, but still, this is one of the highest projected scoring games of the week. It's going to be one that we want bits and pieces from, because again, if the sports makers are projecting this game to be high scoring, we can project a lot of fantasy points from touchdowns, but also yards on the field, moving the ball, getting opportunities. You guys know all of that already. And then obviously we're going to be starting the stars here. Again, pretty much every piece I want from this offense. We're starting Patrick Mahomes, Rashee Rice, Isaiah Pacheco, Travis Kelce, and on the other side, we got Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, maybe even Gabe Davis if you need it. But we have to be sitting Tyler Lockett out of our lineups. He's been extremely inconsistent so far this year, and especially as of late, that's not something we can have going into the last matchup to get us into the playoffs. And they get a matchup against the 49ers, who have been fire as of late. It's one of those things where you kind of just have to ride the hot hand. They've been really good, and you don't want to get in the way of their defense or even their offense, really. And it just adds to the reason why I'm not really in love with starting Lockett. Again, it's another one of those guys like Jordan Addison. I don't see where the payout is that worth the amount of risk you're going to be playing. Jason has been increasing his snaps every single week. He's been looking good, getting a decent target share. He had his best game of the season last week with 11 targets. He's projected for 5 receptions this week. He's splitting 2 wide receiver sets with Tyler Lockett. I'm not even sure if this offensive line can hold up long enough for Geno to have time to pass and let all of his routes complete. So I'm not going to be starting Lockett. I'm not going to be starting JSN. We are going to be starting DK though. Pretty much whatever matchup you get, you got to be starting him. Interestingly enough though, for the running backs, it looks like Kenneth Walker is doubtful for this matchup and Zach Charbonnet is doubtful for this matchup, which leaves DJ Dallas as the only running back left. If this were to be the case, I really wouldn't be excited to start him. I know the running back pool is really bare. If you're in a deeper league or maybe you just need a guy, he's a fine option, but by no means am I really excited to put him in my lineup and a guy that I would suggest for you guys to go with. As for the 49ers, great game from Debo last week. The Seahawks are top 10 in points allowed to wide receivers. We're starting Debo, Ayuk, Kittle, Purdy, obviously Christian McCaffrey. Again, all of these wide receiver options are going to be a bit more risky because there's so many mouths to feed, so many targets to be accounted for, but you cannot ignore it. Start all of these guys. And real quick, I'm going to give you guys a couple players that should be must starts, but depending on your league size, they might not be. Try to tailor these videos as much as possible to everybody because I want everybody to be included. If you got DJ Moore, make sure he is a must start. And if you have him on your team and you're already going to be starting him, just know he's a safe, amazing play. His performances with Justin Fields and without have been night and day. I mean, it's literally not even close to being close. And we get Justin Fields back this week. They're coming off a bye week. They get a matchup against the Lions, who are a positive defense against the pass. And make sure to have Mike Evans in your lineup. I know this one seems pretty obvious because of the 30 bomb he dropped last week. Still, some people might be a little bit hesitant because they're going against the Atlanta Falcons, which allow the 5th least points to opposing wide receivers. It's not a place where you should be worried about him. The Buccaneers have a decent enough pass volume for him to be good regardless of the matchup. But another absolute must sit, and one I'm probably the most passionate about making sure is on your bench, is Gus Edwards. If you guys have been around this page for long enough, you know I absolutely hate committee backfields. They're never anything good. It's not something you want to be getting into. He's been losing his time on field. His snaps have been decreasing by the week, with one of his season lows at 27% last week. And now we see Keaton Mitchell coming up and getting more and more snaps. The complete opposite of Gus Edwards. This is not good. It's probably going to be about a 50-50 split this week coming up. And the Ravens are fresh out of their bye week. If you've been around this page for long enough, or you're just super smart on your own, you know that after the bye weeks, teams tend to get their final rosters complete, their depth charts and everything. That's why we see rookies get more involved. And this is just a historical fact. It's pretty much proven by every single team every single year. And again, that just hurts Gus Edwards even more. It lowers his ceiling. If Keaton Mitchell is going to get used maybe in the receiving game a little bit, and as well as the red zone work, what points can we really bank on Gus Edwards? Again, the risk to reward is just not it. This is the week that you need to win to get you into the playoffs or just secure you a good seed. And it's not even like it's a good matchup to where you can be excited to put him in your lineup. The Rams allow the 7th least points to opposing running backs. They are very tough against the run. They've only allowed 1 rushing touchdown in the past 5 games by a running back. Lamar Jackson will probably have to carry the load for these running backs. We're going to be starting Lamar. Zay is a decent flex if you need it. Isaiah likely can be a tight end you can start. He's a top 10 in my opinion, but he is number 10. Take that for what you will. If you got a better guy, you don't need to throw him into your starting lineup. Everybody else, I wouldn't really be expecting you guys to start. But as for the Rams, Puka is a bit of an interesting case. I would be starting him over guys like Adam Thielen, Zay Jones, Tyler Lockett, but that's about the level and caliber of guys where I would be starting him over. Cooper Kupp is around the same level. They're both really risky from what we've seen this year, but a lot of people just aren't in the position to sit them. But as promised, these are some top defenses you can pick up right now that you can plug in right now that have good matchups, as well as a top 10 list of my top 10 defenses of week 14. So that way anybody in this video can get value from it. If you got that defense, you can feel good, and you can just check your waivers to make sure none of them accidentally slipped in on the waivers that nobody's picked up. But number one, super quick, pick up the Texans. They get a matchup against the Jets, who we have been targeting all year, and that defense of just picking up everybody that plays against the Jets have graded out as one of the best defenses in the NFL. So go ahead, continue that. They're rostered in about half of leagues, but also pick up the Saints if you do need another one. They get a matchup against the terrible Panthers. They are consistently projected for one of the least amount of total points every week, and they have a terrible offensive line. There's a really good chance that Bryce Young gets sacked 5 times, which means more fantasy points. But my top 10 defenses in rapid fire are going to be the 49ers against the Seahawks. This one shouldn't really be too debatable. They've been absolutely on fire as of recent. The Seahawks aren't a really good offense. They are pretty decent, but they've been slowing down a little bit. But then at number 2, we have Dallas against the Eagles. This is going to be a pretty high scoring game both ways, but again, the Dallas defense gives a whole bunch of upside that we can be excited about. Interceptions, fumbles, all that stuff that they can recover. It's good. Number 3 is the Ravens defense against the Rams. They just haven't been the same offense as they were last year. They are very risky, so the Ravens are a good option there. But then we have the Dolphins against the Titans. The Titans have been one of the worst offenses in the NFL. Yes, Will Levis has elevated this offense just a little bit, but there's a very real shot that they're going to be playing from behind, which means more passing attempts and forcing the ball to be passed, and that means more dropbacks, so more sack opportunities and obviously more interceptions. The Dolphins are a great defense anyways on their own. Jalen Ramsey has been getting more healthy and playing better. They're playing as a unit, even if they are dealing with some injuries. But then I have the Browns against the Jaguars. I will move them up a couple spots if Trevor Lawrence does miss this game. If he misses, they are a top defense you need to be starting. Either way, they're still top 5. But then we have the Saints defense against the Panthers at number 6, which is really why I want you guys to pick them up if you haven't. I don't know how a top 6 defense is still on the waivers a good amount of 70% of leagues. And then we got the Packers against the Giants, another defense that's really not rostered in a lot of leagues. If you got them, you can be happy about it. The Giants offense is not great, despite them maybe kind of putting together some runs, some points recently. They're not good. Again, the Packers defense is good on their own. They don't really need a good matchup to be absolutely amazing. But the Jets are next on this list. Again, number 1 defense in pretty much every metric. They get a tougher matchup against the Texans offense, which is one of the more dynamic and pass heavy and just fantasy point friendly. So it is going to be a little bit tougher for them. You can't be sitting them though. They're a great matchup. But then on the other side, we're going to be starting the Texans. The Jets offense, on the other hand, is one of the worst in the NFL. Not one we really have to worry about putting up too many points. Then to finish it off, we have the Chiefs against the Bills. This is going to be one of the more high scoring games, but the Chiefs defense is good. They should force turnovers. Josh Allen does make a lot of interceptions every game. It's just a known fact at this point. But that's going to finish off this video. If you guys did get any type of information from it, I seriously would appreciate you guys dropping a like, and make sure to comment any of your questions, and I will get to all of them. I will see you guys in the next videos coming after this week.